Before we get too deeply entrenched in what rubrics are, we need to make sure that we spend some time on what rubrics are not. This entails some great thought and deeper thought about exactly how you're going to assess your students and really the true definition of what a rubric is includes comparing it to what rubrics are not. So let's spend a little bit of time on this topic. Rubrics are not about counting up components rather than proficiency in the outcome. And so we are specifically not creating a rubric that has a count in it of certain items within the particular project or assignment. It is not the purpose of a rubric is not to track the number of specific things inside of a paper, poster, presentation, whatever the project might be. Okay? That does not demonstrate understanding from your students' parts. And so this is not a good rubric. Let's say that you had as an assignment a presentation for students to do by choosing a state in the United States. And you decided to create a rubric that had 4 specific items that you were going to try to describe for your students to demonstrate their knowledge about. And so let's just take an example of the first one, their presentation have facts about the state. And so the best descriptor says that their presentation includes at least 6 facts about the state. Maybe that was in your instructions for this particular assignment. A rating of 3 says that it includes 4 or 5 facts about the state. Rating of 2 includes 2 to 3 facts, and a rating of 1 facts are missing. And so if we look at graphics here, just as another example, each slide has at least 1 graphic. That would give a perfect score or an excellent score of 4. Most slides have at least 1 graphic. That would give a score of 3. Score of 2 would be very few graphics. There are some there, but very few. And a score of 1 would have no graphics in it. Maybe that column should be 0, but you get the idea here. As we go through this, and this is a very common way to build what we in the past maybe have considered to be a rubric. But this is not really the definition of a rubric. This is not measuring the quality or describing in detail exactly what we are looking for from the student's demonstration of their learning. This is more of just counting items up. We don't want to do that within our rubrics. That is a checklist instead, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Rubrics are also not about keeping track of requirements. Okay, similar maybe to the count that we were just looking at. A rubric should not simply reiterate the requirements of an assignment. Okay, it is not a checklist again. And so the rubric is not a way for you to go through the instructions all over again for the assignment. That's what the instructions are for. Okay, so again, this is an example of not a good rubric. So let's say that you have an assignment of a written report, 2-page written report, whatever it might be. And you want to make sure that it includes an introduction. And so for a full score on that, it includes a full introduction to the topic. For a score of 3, it includes a minimal introduction. For a score of 2, it mentions the topic. And for a score of 1, it has no introduction. You want to make sure that they have a thesis statement. And so a score of 4 here would include a very clear thesis statement or research question. A score of 3, recognizable thesis statement, and so on. The next item is sources. Maybe the instruction said you have to have at least 3 sources. This kind of gets back into our count thing here again, because the count and a list of requirements or tracking requirements is very similar. Okay, maybe our last item was a chart or diagram. A chart or diagram is included for each main topic. Chart or diagram is included for most topics. Again, we're making sure that they have all those things in their report when that does not address what this report should have as a reason behind the assignment of trying to hit a very specific learning objective. All of these items should be included in the instructions, right? With kind of a pre-checklist beforehand for students to go through to make sure they have all these things, but this is not what the report should be graded on. Rubrics are also not about setting assignment instructions into chart format. Okay, we're kind of on a theme here. We're kind of looking at some similar things, but again, we don't want the assignment instructions to just go into a chart format. We don't want to confuse the learning outcome that we're shooting for to be assessed with a task used to assess it. And so we don't want the rubric to become just a task, or the assignment to become a task for just hitting specific things, as opposed to a quality demonstration of their learning of a specific topic. Don't measure the product. That's not what a rubric is about. We're trying to measure the learning outcome, or proficiency is supposed to get students to demonstrate. Okay, so we're not measuring the product, we're not measuring the task that they're doing, but we are measuring the learning outcome, or the proficiency that that task they're doing or presenting or demonstrating to you somehow is supposed to get the students to show that they have learned that specific learning outcome, or to what level they have learned that outcome. It's not about the task. It's not just to assess them, how compliant they are in a list of instructions. That's not the point of a rubric. Rubrics are also not about scoring for extraneous features like neatness and use of color and things that have nothing to do with the learning outcome being measured. That you give them points for things that have nothing to do with what you covered in this particular unit or topic or chapter, or however you break up your course. Don't include items in your rubric that are extras. That's not the purpose of the rubric. The rubric should be very clear beforehand to give your students your expectation of what you're looking for in this assignment. Rubrics are also not about, now we're getting a little deeper here, they're not about judging. Okay, we're not judging or giving the reflection on that, but rather matching the student's performance to the description within each criterion of the rubric as best as possible. So our goal with our rubric is to write descriptors at every level for every criterion that describes what their performance should look like, depending on what the performance is. If it's writing a report, giving a presentation, turning in a project of some type, creating a video, whatever the project itself is. We want every one of those descriptions to be as clear and full as possible in order for us to match their presentation, their performance, with the criterion. So the goal, again, is to write the best descriptors possible within your rubrics, to make them very unique from each other also, so that you can differentiate what level in each criterion each student is at with their performance. Those are some instances of what rubrics are not. That was intended to give you some thought process of what rubrics are not supposed to be. I will confess, I have done some of those things in my past rubrics back in the day. But our goal is to build better and better rubrics as we go. And so as we progress through the course, we are going to try to develop our knowledge and understanding of what rubrics are.